You're back listening to Green Left Radio on 3CR, and we are now joined by Michael Jong from the Korean Melbourne Candlelight Action Group to speak about the protests against the recent release of radioactive wastewater by the Japanese government. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Good morning, Chloe.
Good morning. So, Michael, would you be able to just firstly tell our listeners about the emergency situation the people of Korea and also neighboring countries face by the Japanese government releasing this radioactive waste from the Fukushima nuclear reactor into the Pacific Ocean?
Well, I don't know exactly about other countries, but as far as I know, China has stopped importing all Japanese seafood, including processed seafood. And I understand that there is no Japan campaign going on across China, and that anti-Japanese sentiment is actually intensifying. To talk about Korea, the industry that had the biggest hit is the fishery industry. Sales in the fish market have dropped dramatically, and the restaurants that sell seafood are also falling. In some areas, sales have risen for a short time, which is interpreted as a result of the last rush of people trying to eat more seafood before the wastewater reaches in Korean shore. And in the case of ships going out to work, to the ocean, I have to say that it's fortunate because they don't need to spend any money, although their income isn't good at all. But it's quite different situation in the farm. In Korea, we have farms growing oysters, abalones, seaweed, as well as many kind of fishes. Since the usual sales are not taking place, the volume of farming is increasing, and the cost continues to increase. In the case of Japanese government, the budget has already been set up to compensate for the losses to the Japanese fisheries and farmers. But the Korean government is only talking, not actually deploying the budget. The Korean government is currently banning import of Fukushima seafood and is telling us monitoring radioactivity of most seafood so people can enjoy it as before. But the anxiety of the people who have studied hard over the last 2 years about this wastewater has not been resolved. So the consumption of seafood is expected to decrease for a long time. And panic buying happened too. There was a lot of panic buying for frozen fish and salt. The government continues to advertise that the supply is sufficient and supply is safe in the future. But as I said earlier, people's anxiety has not disappeared, so the panic buying is inevitable. Considering that Korea was one of the countries with no panic buying at all when the world was panic buying due to COVID in the past, you can understand how people are going crazy about this whole thing.
Michael, would you just be able to elaborate a little bit on why it's dangerous and the way that heavy metals, including radioactive isotopes, can tend to accumulate through the food chain, including through marine plants and animals?
Yeah, what we believe is that radioactive element in the water, of course, going to the small fishes. Small fishes eating those things in the marine world. Then, bigger fishes eating the small fishes. Well, as far as I know, radioactive elements are not dissolved. It's not going to disappear for a short time. It stays in the body system. So it's basically stacking up. At the end of food chain, we're human. We're going to eat the fish, which means, we're going to stacking up radioactivity materials inside of our body. It could cause not like a small disease. It could cause the terminal diseases. So, but because some people, it might take quite longer than other people. So we might can't tell like the cause of the terminal disease, but the at the end, like we're going to feel something's wrong, and we could say like find out like the reason, the cause of the terminal disease is quite hard. But the thing is, we just want to ban this. Stop this dumping the water. Because we really don't know. In human science, still we know little bit of this radioactive element. So what I'm saying is we just stop it now, and we need to study a bit more, then we can make a decision on it.
I wanted to ask, President Yong Suk Yeol has led a campaign to kind of ease public concern. It's kind of encouraged the consumption of seafood. But despite this, there are many South Korean environmental groups and members of the public that are alarmed. And of course, Yoon's disapproval rating has risen to the highest in months. And can you tell us about the inaction of the South Korean government and also some of the mass protests that have happened against the Fukushima nuclear waste dumping?
Yeah, the approval rating for President Yoon was originally quite low. However, after dumping of nuclear wastewater, which happened the 24th of last month, around 3 weeks ago, there's no sign of any further increase. That's why looking at it, President Yoon talks as if he believes the nuclear wastewater has no scientific problem at all, as the Japanese government announced. At the same time, he described the people talking about the dangers of nuclear wastewater as unscientific people, and even described them as targets of attack. Recent survey said 84% of Korean people doesn't like this dumping. So I would say he is not really up to the popularity somehow. Once the presidential office spent taxpayers' money to take and distribute a video clip that nuclear wastewater to be discharged from Fukushima is technically and scientifically purified and safe to environment, including human. The Korean government did what the Japanese government is supposed to do. As the president of the nearest neighboring country, he should feel the public concern together and tell the concern to the leader of Japan and ask so many questions before the dumping. But somehow that never happened, and he spent money to promote the Japanese government position, the dumping. Nobody would like it. Speaking of video stories, the Australian embassy in Tokyo, by the way, made a short video saying Fukushima fish is safe to eat while its staff were eating fish and chips. I think the fish is from Fukushima, and they posted it on Twitter. I was very surprised when I watched the video, especially when there was a scene where two little girls ate the fish at the end. And I was very surprised. I was speechless. If you remember, the Australian government asked China about the origin of COVID, which resulted in a huge trade problem. What questions did the Australian government ask the Japanese government this time? Australia, the leader of the Pacific countries, has never asked any question to the Japanese government this time. The Australian government's official position is that it believes Japanese transparency, so it believes Fukushima fish is safe. But very recently, Glen Waverley Labour Party branch and New South Wales MP Anurag Shantivong issued a statement against the Japanese dumping. So I have to say that this is quite late, but still a good starting point. By the way, back to the question. There was originally a series of protests in South Korea calling for the impeachment of Yoon Suk Yeol. And as Japanese dumping and the Korean government side in Japan began, more protests have continued. I understand that more people are participating in the protest. I just said I understand because the government is now overpowering the media. It is one of the reasons for the impeachment protest, as people's freedom of speech is suppressed, the media suppressed. It's quite hard to know the exact scale of the protest at this time. But you can think the large scale of protest happens every weekend in Korea. At the same time, whether big or small, protest happens all over the world. For example, in Germany, candlelights go on Friday in daytime. United States, such as New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, Boston, and Japan, Indonesia, Switzerland, and Sydney. In Australia, candlelights will be on tomorrow, Saturday, and the list is getting thicker now.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's great that people around the world are showing solidarity. I think, everyone should be concerned about this issue. All the water in the world connects, so it's it is important that people support the rally on it. Just maybe give us the date, the time, and just the date of the next protest here in Melbourne, Michael, if you can, for listeners.
Yes, in Melbourne. We have a protest coming on 23rd of September, which is Saturday at 6 p.m. Federation Square, Flinders Street side this time. And next one is coming 28th of October, which is Saturday, 6 p.m. Location will be Federation Square or State Library, Victoria. We haven't made a hard decision yet. As I said earlier, it started with the impeachment protest of the President Yoon, plus against Japanese nuclear wastewater dumping. But the Australians did not really know at all. It is fair to say that you don't really need to know about the President Yoon, but we believe the dumping is a big problem for everyone in this planet, including Australians. I thought it was not desirable for us to keep it to ourselves, and I thought it would be better for people to get together and speak louder, so that the Australian government would start asking questions to the Japanese government, so that Japan could stop its nuclear attack against everyone in this planet.
All right. So we're just running a bit out of time. And can you tell, before we kind of wrap up the show, is there anything you'd like to let listeners know, especially in terms of the Melbourne Candlelight Action Group, and how people can support?
Okay, I'll make it really quick. As I said before, we, as a group, we gathered for the impeachment of President Yoon, and then, we start doing this. We are not like people with any special experience before. We're just simple migrants from Korea that you can easily meet in your neighborhood. So as a result, the group is not solid yet, but I would say it is a little loose. However, I am confident that the will to do the right thing is the strongest. So we have our Facebook page. Not many contents are available so far in English, but we are working on it. So if you search Melbourne Candlelight Action, you could join us. We're going to upload more information about this nuclear wastewater and further schedule of future protests. And then one more benefit would be you will learn a bit more about Korean politics too. Before you wrap it up, let me tell you this. The word we hear the most when we protest is that other countries are also releasing nuclear wastewater. To put it simply, Korea, China, Japan, and many other countries are discharging some amount of radioactive water into the ocean. However, this water was used as a cooling water in nuclear power plants. It is completely different from the water exposed to nuclear reactor, which was melted down like in Fukushima. It is a huge amount of water from the accident that humankind have never experienced before. So it is water that can't even be determined at this moment what kind of danger it has. if the wastewater is safe, they could just process it and use it for its own industrial or agricultural purpose. But Japanese decided to dump into the ocean. We are all sharing. Why? Why the Japanese government ignores people's biggest concern and dumping it into ocean? What if after a few years, this nuclear wastewater turns out to be too dangerous for humans as well as for marine plants and animals? Are we going to drain oil and water and refill it? Well, what would we do? We will serve, by that time, food that we couldn't sprinkle salt. We wouldn't eat fish and chips anymore. We wouldn't rush off to get more prawns before Easter. And I wouldn't eat that beautiful scallop pie in Apollo Bay. And all this, forget water sports. No more surfing, diving, whatever you do at St. Kilda Beach. They're all gone by that time. So let me tell you, all your listeners, this is the last one. If you don't stop it now, there's no way to stop. Please join us 23rd of September, 6 p.m. at Federation Square.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Michael. Yeah, we'll hopefully all see you at that protest. And yeah, definitely encourage our listeners to attend the protest, which is going to be happening at 5 p.m. At the Federation Square on Saturday, September the 23rd.
Thank you for your...
6 p.m. It's 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Oh yeah, 6 p.m. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Michael, for your activism and for coming on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today. Thank you.
So listeners were just listening to Michael Jung from the Korean Melbourne Candlelight Action Group. He was talking about the fight against this release of... So the Japanese government has actually started releasing the radioactive wastewater into the ocean. So there have been global protests, and Michael was just explaining a bit about what the dangers are currently for the people of Korea.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all our listeners. We're getting into the sort of end of the